All right, this video is on perimeter, uh, area, volume, and surface area. Sorry, just erasing some stuff here. Okay, so we'll do perimeter and area first. Those are easier. If you get a square, a lot of times is how perimeter and area questions are. You remember that all four sides are equal. Okay, so if they give you this, and that's all the information they give you, and it says find the perimeter or find the area, you just want to know that because all four sides of a square, we'll say square, just make sure, we know that if they give us one side, we know what all four sides are. Yeah, right? So perimeter means add them all up, right? So if they ask me, or you, more importantly, for perimeter, and they say one side is 10, we want to know that 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 40. If they ask for area, right, we know area is just length times width, so it's just going to be like this one times this one. 10 times 10 is 100. Okay. And finally, they could ask, this is a trickier question for perimeter and area, what is the difference between the area of the square and the perimeter of the square? That would just mean you take 100 minus 40, which gives us 60. Okay, that's really all you got to know for perimeter and area. Those questions are really pretty straightforward. For volume and surface area, you just have to put in the time to memorize a couple formulas. Okay, so without knowing the formulas, you won't be able to get it right. If you know the formulas, stuff is pretty easy. So we're going to do an example of each. Okay, so two types of volume, and there's two types of surface area. So volume, so at first, that's going to be rectangular solid. Sorry, it's going to take me a second to write all these out. Okay, rectangular solid is easier. Just length times width times height. Okay, so and then they're just going to give you all three of those and probably not a whole lot else, and you'll just multiply the three together. Okay, so that's going to be extremely simple and straightforward. Rectangular solid volume, just multiply the three numbers together. It's easy. Okay, but for a cylinder, and we'll go over an example with cylinder. For a cylinder, your number is pi r squared h. Okay, and it's important, they're not going to give you the formula, so you got to know it. Okay, so that's just one you're going to have to commit to your mind. And what they're going to do is something like radius is 6, height is 8. Okay, then you just plug it in. Okay, they're going to say for a cylinder, what is the volume given radius is 6, height is 8. Okay, and then we plug in our formula right over here, yeah? Okay, so what do we have? We have pi. You know, in the world of pi equals 3.14, forget about it, right? You're always answering these questions in terms of pi, okay? 6 squared times 8, right? Okay, and just taking it down a step further, we got pi times 6 squared times 8. We want to know that 6 squared is 6 times 6. That's 36 times 8. Okay, and 36 times 8 is 288. And just throw a pi on there. There we go. So that's how we do that one, right? That's volume of a cylinder. Got to know pi r squared h, right? Just take the time to dedicate that to your mind, right? If you need to make like a little flashcard or something like that, fine. We got to have that one memorized. It's very easy, very likely I would say that one shows up. Rectangular solid, easier. It's just length times width times height. But you do still have to have memorized that that's what the formula actually is. Okay, those are the only two ones you have to know for volume. Okay, so if we got that, if we got those two memorized, then we got volume and we've got perimeter and we've got area, and then that just leaves us with surface area. Okay, so again, we have rectangular solid. We'll actually have three here. We'll do rectangular solid first. We'll do each of these. Rectangular solid, cylinder, and cube. Those are the three. Okay. I would make sure I had the volume ones memorized first before I jumped into the surface area questions. If you're getting perimeter area and volume right and you're getting surface area wrong, your score within these type of questions is pretty good. Okay, we'd like to get all of them, but that's the order that we want. We want to get that low-hanging fruit first, which is perimeter and area. Volume's pretty low-hanging, and then these ones, they involve a little bit more. You can get these, right? Okay. Okay, so, oops, that was supposed to be an H. Hopefully we can read that. Okay, so all we're doing there is we have, so this can be like, oh man, this one's harder to memorize. I got all these lengths and widths and heights and stuff. Okay, all it is I've got this 2 in the front of each of these variables. Okay, one time it's length and width. The other time it is width and height. The other time it's length and height. Okay, just the different combinations of 2 that we can have when there's length, width, and height. Okay, so that's all it really is. Okay, so say that they tell us length, let's see here, what do we got? Length is 7, width is 5, height is 8. Okay. Okay. So all we're gonna so once we know that, and if we know this formula, we're really just plugging in numbers and then multiplying stuff out. Okay. And again, 2 length width plus 2 width height plus 2 length height. What order you put those in doesn't really matter. As long as you remember it's 2 times 2 of those variables and just do the 3 different combinations that you could possibly do. Okay, so as we plug this stuff in just to show you how it works, 2 length is 7, right? Width is 5. There's one number. We'll multiply that out in a minute. Plus, then again, we put the 2 out in front. Again, width is 5. Height is 8. It's not nearly as hard as some people seem to think it is. Plus 2 times length is 7. Height is 8. Okay. Then we just got to multiply this stuff out. Okay. So if we go 7 times 5 is 35. Right here for this first one. 7 times 5 is 35 times 2. 35 times 2. That's 70. And we do this one next. 5 times 8 is 40. 40 times 2 is 80. 7 times 8 is 56. 56 times 2 is 112. Okay, those are our 3 numbers. We add these 3 up. The surface area of this rectangular solid, where the length is 7, the width is 5, the height is 8, is 262. Okay, so there's rectangular solid. Okay, so let's move on. We'll erase this out of here. We got 2 more to look at. Okay, these questions do show up. Getting used to what that formula is important. Really all we did was just plug that stuff in, right? Just plugging in numbers and multiplying them out. Okay, cylinder. Okay, the formula for that one is 2. This one's a little trickier to memorize. You can do it though. Times pi r squared h plus 2 pi r plus h 2 pi r, sorry. Okay. And so let's say they tell us radius is 6 and height is 8. Okay. So there we have our information. So then we're just going to plug in that formula there at the top, right? So we'll start off with the 2. And again, forget about pi equals 3.14. We're just answering these in terms of pi. Okay, and then it was pi r squared h. Right, so put those little parentheses around it. Make it a little easier to read. So that's a 6 squared times 8. Okay, plus, then we see over here we have h 2 pi r, right? Okay, so we have height was 8 times 2 times pi times radius is 6. Okay, so we filled all that stuff out, right? And you just want to think, just take your time with it. That's such an important thing in math. Take your time with the stuff. So let's try to multiply this stuff out. Okay, so we have the pi. Let's do that. Well, we can put the pi in there. Okay, so I got pi times, right here, 6 squared. That's 36. Let's throw that 8 on there, since I don't know what 36 times 8 is off the top of my head. Plus, okay, we have 8 times 2, so we'll call that 16, times pi times 6. Sorry, I can't write in a straight line, but what can you do? Okay, so if we sort of multiply all this stuff out here, right? You go 36 times 8 times pi times 2. Once we multiply all that stuff out, that becomes, and I know you don't have time to multiply it all out. We'll skip over that part for now. Right now we just want to understand process. And that ends up being 576 pi. And this one, 16 pi times 6. 16 times 6 is 96. That's 96 pi. Okay. And if you add these together, we end up with 670 pi. Okay. So, it's a bunch of plugging in numbers, being comfortable with how to square numbers like 5 squared, 6 squared, 7 squared, numbers like that are going to show up. And then knowing this formula, just plugging it in. Okay. One more. Again, make sure most people have the perimeter and area stuff pretty easily. Make sure we have the volume stuff memorized first, then we move into the surface area. Okay, surface area, the formulas take a little bit more time to memorize, and there's a little more math. It's a little easier to screw it up. Doesn't mean that you will, but a little bit easier. So we want to make sure we have the volume stuff memorized first, and then we're comfortable doing those type of problems. Then we get the surface area last. Okay, so the last one for surface area is a cube. And perhaps I should have done cube first, because this formula is a little easier to memorize. Okay, so the surface area of a cube is just 6 x squared, or maybe I should have said 6s squared, with x being the number of sides. So they'll tell you something like they'll say something like each side is 8. What is the surface area of a cube? Okay, so then all you're going to do, right, is this one's going to be easier. 6 times 8 squared, right? 8 squared is 64. So you got to be comfortable squaring numbers here. If that's an issue, then we definitely want to spend some time getting comfortable with being able to square a bunch of numbers. And then we just have 6 times 64. Once we multiply that out, 384 is our final answer. If one of the sides is 8, surface area of a cube, 384. Okay, so there's all we have to know, right? So we have perimeter, area. Remember, for squares, all the sides are equal. Volume of rectangular solid, which is length times width times height. Pretty straightforward. Volume of a cylinder, pi r squared h, something that you just have to dedicate to memory. Once we get into surface areas, I probably, if I was you, go to the process of memorizing cube first, which is just 6x squared, right, with x being a side. And then the two tougher ones to remember, surface area of a rectangular solid, 2 length width plus 2 width height plus 2 length height. And then finally, surface area of a cylinder, the hardest one to memorize, 2 times pi r squared h plus h 2 pi r. And that's all the stuff you could possibly have to know for this topic.